In my race for the Idaho State House of Representatives, I determined that I must make very clear to you where I stand. And where I stand is this: I stand by the Constitution. Our founding fathers knew what tyranny was. They had lived under the boot of King George. And they created a constitution. They created a government that had protection so that that could never happen again. But there's a provision for those protections. You see, we must understand what they are. We, the people, have an obligation to know. And one of the most epic failures in our country is that we do not teach the Constitution in our homes, that we do not teach the Constitution in our schools. And I'm talking about from kindergarten through graduation. This is the supreme law of our land, and most people don't have the foggiest idea of what it says. And when we do teach the Constitution in education, we explain the mechanics, the separation of powers, the judicial, the executive, the legislative. We talk about how a bill can become a law, but we never talk about should a bill become a law. Is a bill constitutional if? And is a bill not constitutional when? We never have that discussion. And so we have become a constitutionally ignorant society, raising constitutionally ignorant children, and therefore we have been victimized by tyranny. Right now, our country has $17 trillion in debt. It's unpaid debt. It is unpayable debt. It will enslave our children and our children's children and our children's children's children. Our government has laws that would imprison the private citizen if they ran their businesses or their households according to the rules that the federal government uses to manage its financial affairs. You see, we have to take responsibility. We can't spend more than we earn. We can't borrow 40 cents for every dollar we spend, or someone is going to charge us with a crime. Someone is going to force us to pay. Someone is going to imprison us. But the federal government operates without any restrictions, without any laws. They put themselves above our law. Now, a constitution has three very large words: we the people. Now, I can think of only two reasons why those three words were so much larger than the rest. Either they began to write the Constitution and realized that they didn't have enough paper, so they determined to switch to a smaller font, or they wanted us to understand that we, the people, are the greatest power in this nation. So the Constitution has a few things that everyone should understand. Article 1, Section 1, clearly states that all legislative power is vested in Congress. Now, Article 1, Section 8 has a very short list of powers that Congress has. And it states that they can make laws for the general welfare of the people. But those laws must be confined inside that list of enumerated powers. It says that they can tax to pay for government activity, but all that activity and the taxes derived for that activity must fit within the framework of those enumerated powers. Well, that's not how our government works. Virtually all government activity today exists outside of that framework. Now, if it's not clear enough what that framework means, we have the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. And that clearly states that all powers, except those specifically enumerated for the federal government, are powers that reside with the states or the people. It's very clear what our Constitution means. And yet our government operates outside of the framework of those limitations. They do this in two ways. First, they pass laws, and our lawmakers are so ignorant of the Constitution that they fail to ask, is this constitutional? No. Bills pass or fail based on how the lawmaker feels about the bill. Is it a good thing for the people, or is it a bad thing for the people? And no one ever asks, is it constitutional? Now, there's one other thing that the federal government does. They do grant certain powers to the states. But here is how they stick their finger and their influence and their power into areas which they are constitutionally prohibited from. Do you know why the drinking age in Idaho is 21 instead of 19 or 25 or 27? Well, it's very simple. The federal government takes tax money from Idaho citizens. Now, this tax money is not earmarked to pay for those things which are enumerated as constitutional powers. No, it's earmarked to pay for things that are outside of that framework. So that makes the tax itself unconstitutional. And then they will come back to the state and say, if you will do things according to our edict, we will give you some of your money back. So they give us money for our roads if we will set the drinking age to 21. They give us money for health care if we support Obamacare. They give us money for Medicaid if we will put into place Medicaid expansion. They give us money for education if we adopt the Common Core standards. Now keep in mind that the money they withhold, unless we play the game their way, is our money. They took it from us unconstitutionally. And in Idaho, our governor, our legislation has been weak in this, has been cowardly in this. And because they do not understand the Constitution, they fail the people. And I'd like to give you one example. This is related to Common Core. Now, Common Core was approved in the state of Idaho in 2011 by our House and Senate Education Committees. It was thrust on us. They had no idea what Common Core said. In fact, we didn't really get a good look at it until 3 years later. Now, Senator Stephen Thane, who is a man that I like, who is a man that I think is on the right side, has challenged Common Core on a number of issues. While I applaud him for standing up, he is so misguided because he doesn't know that he's not even asking the right question. He talked about having several issues with Common Core as it is now structured. And he said, quote, I plan on working on each issue separately and see if my concerns can be addressed before we decide to repeal. Now, Senator Thane, my challenge to you is this. Show me in the enumerated powers inside the Constitution where Congress can mandate education. You can't find that. Now, if it's not constitutional, we must say no. We must simply say no. Now we have Obamacare, and our state accepted a massive bribe, which was actually just a return of our money, which was taken from us unconstitutionally, in order to endorse Obamacare and create the Idaho Health Care Exchange. Governor Butch Otter was a leader in this effort. My opponent, Kelly Packer, was a leader in this. And in doing so, she proved herself constitutionally ignorant. You see, you can't find in the Constitution any place where it gives the federal government the right to mandate health care. And on top of that, to mandate commerce by forcing everyone to buy a product. And on top of that, you can't find anywhere where it says that the president can change his mind and change the law again and again and again with executive orders when he has no legislative powers, according to the Constitution. So I submit to you that if we had followed the Constitution, this $17 trillion of unpayable debt that we have would not exist, because consider the combined cost of these programs alone, of road maintenance money and Medicaid and health care and food stamps and subsidized housing. You see, virtually everything they do is unconstitutional, and therefore virtually everything they spend money on is unconstitutional. About the only thing they spend money on, or at least large amounts of money, is the military, and that's justified. And they increase the absurdity level by now moving to reduce the money we spend on the military so they'll have more money to spend unconstitutionally. Now, there's other things. Show me in the Constitution where they can create the Board of Education. Show me in the Constitution where they can create the EPA. Show me in the Constitution where they can authorize NSA to spy on us. Show me in the Constitution where they can authorize the IRS to target and persecute certain classes of citizens. Show me in the Constitution where they can grant the IRS powers to mandate our health care. And this is especially frightening in light of the fact that the IRS likes some classes of citizens and persecutes others. Show me in the Constitution where they can create Homeland Security. Because you see, the only forces that the Constitution allows them to raise are forces that protect our borders. They cannot, by the Constitution, create a force that operates inside of our borders. That is a state power. And finally, show me in the Constitution where the government has the right to infringe on a law-abiding citizen's right to keep and bear arms. Show me where they have the right to restrict when and where and how he can do that. So if we eliminate all of this unconstitutional nonsense, and thereby eliminating all of the spending that goes with it, what would that do to our national debt? Now, there's some other things. There's special interest. Show me in the Constitution where the government can take our tax dollars and use it to provide what they call health care, but only to a limited number of our citizens, while ignoring the rest. Only it's really not health care, it's abortion, and it's Planned Parenthood, and it's unconstitutional. So, this is specifically to Kelly Packer. I am opposing you. I intend to take your seat in the House of Representatives because you are constitutionally ignorant. Because if you understood the Constitution, instead of voting for the exchange, you would be fighting with everything in your power to repeal Obamacare. You would be leading Idaho in an attack on the federal government for their unconstitutional actions. If you understood the Constitution, you would be screaming at the top of your lungs to make Common Core go away because it is not constitutional. If you understood the Constitution, you would be fighting with everything in you to eliminate abortion. Now, what most people don't know is there's two kinds of abortions. There's the procedural type, where the baby is surgically removed from the mother's womb. And there's the medical type, which goes largely unreported, kills an unknown number of babies. It's where the mother swallows a few pills, and it induces a miscarriage, and the child is aborted. Now, Kelly Packer, you say you're against abortion, but you voted against an amendment to the healthcare exchange that would have given healthcare purchasers the right to either include or exclude coverage for medical abortions. This didn't force anybody to do anything. It gave us choice, which could be defined as liberty, which could be defined as freedom. And Kelly Packer, you voted against that. Kelly Packer, if you understood the Constitution, you would know that we are being robbed by the federal government for the murder of children, and you would be leading the attack against that. Kelly Packer, I find you shockingly silent on every issue that matters. Now, our government's tendency to pass laws based on feel-good rather than constitutional issues is important. You see, for everything that passes, there are people that are well-intentioned. They think, this is good for the people, so let's do it regardless of what the Constitution says. But our founding fathers knew differently. They knew that when all power resides in one place, tyranny is the result. They knew that there must be a division of powers or this country would fall. It would collapse upon itself. They understand these things. The Idaho legislature doesn't. Idaho's governor doesn't. They're constitutionally ignorant. Kelly Packer doesn't understand these things. So, should I be elected, I promise you that I will fight for the Constitution. You see, when too much power resides in one place and tyranny begins to creep into our lives, we will hear things like this. I have a pen and I have a phone and I will act without the assistance of Congress. These are the words of our President Obama, in his most recent State of the Nation address, when he stood before the people of the United States and specifically shouted at the top of his lungs that he will violate the Constitution and he will do so because he can. And the American people said, oh, well, okay. If I am elected, I will go to Boise and I will, at the top of my lungs, stand for the Constitution. I will defend the Constitution, and I will protect it from enemies, foreign and domestic. You have my word. I'm Lance Earl. I'll see you soon.